Sometimes when we do genealogical and historical research, we sometimes just can't find the answer. Sometimes we give up. And I want to convince you that good genealogists and good researchers require persistence. So let's look at an example right now. Well, I've always known that genealogy and the research of history and people requires persistence. But I'm here to convince you now it is necessary, and I have a great example that illustrates that. As I travel and visit and meet you at various places across the country in the past, sometimes I've collected notes about your family or questions that you had. Sometimes I've tried to answer them at those sessions. And I'm going through these things sometimes now, and maybe long after, and maybe there's comments, but sometimes I don't have an email address. And I still go through them because they give me great ideas for finding great records and research. And I was looking through a set just today, and I was reading through this, and the question was, I want to find the parents of Thomas Calhoun Uree. Youree. It's also spelled Urie. Listen, that's the whole point in this case. The spelling is what really gave this away. And I know lots of this family, and I've researched them. He was in Texas in 1880 and in Oklahoma. Afterwards, he died in Oklahoma, and he applied for a pension, but it was denied as they could find no record of him. He was born in Tennessee about 1837. And they were asking questions about they've never been able to piece him together. They'd heard the rumor that he was in a prison during the Civil War and that his father was the commander of the prison he was in. What's the best place to start? Persistence. You know what? Sometimes it's frustrating because I feel like people at this time period, and by the way, there's no telling how old this question was. It's probably from somebody down in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area at some point in the past, or it could be in the Dallas area. But I looked at the family. But to be honest with you, what really attracted my attention was the fact that he applied for a Confederate pension in the state and was rejected. And I had recently heard about, I'm all of the time trying to keep up with where records are. And I understood that the Confederate pensions for Oklahoma were in a new, not a new facility, but available online in a different way. And I wanted to look at that. Okay? So that's exactly what I did. I just wanted to look at what's going on. So let's look at let's look at that record. Now, in regard to that, okay, so here's the home for Oklahoma's state Confederate pension records. It's the Digital Prairie, which is the digital aspect of Oklahoma state records. And so this is where the Confederate pensions are located, and that is the link. Now, you do know that we're focused on the pensions at this point. That's what I'm discussing. But realize there's lots of other records there in Oklahoma, and I want you to, if you're interested, then do some playing and look around. But I just wanted to go look at his pension record based on what this person had said in this letter years ago, that his pension was rejected. So I looked at Thomas C. Uree's pensions. It's pension number 1893, and he's in Garvin County, Oklahoma, and that's correct. Notice that he said discharged from Fort Delaware about the last of May or June 1865. Okay, and I'm not going to show you all the pension, but just some of the information. Now, in regard to that, now he's very feeble of old age. He was enlisted in the fall of 1862. He was discharged again, May or June 1865. He was a member of Company F, 5th Kentucky. Now, he indicated he was in the infantry, but I'm wondering if that may be 5th Kentucky Cavalry. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's the 5th Kentucky, and he was in one unit or the other. It could have been mounted infantry, which sounds like a cavalry unit, and there was a 5th Kentucky mounted infantry. Now, I know about that because I had an ancestor who was in the 5th Kentucky Mounted Infantry, okay? Sometimes it's coincidental that things come to our attention. And so, persistence. Now, within that pension, though, it indicates that the applicant is there, and he was from Aaron Springs. That's the post office at the time. This is the 1950 time period of application, and it was rejected. And you can see it was rejected. Okay. Now, if you look over at the other card to the right, that was in the pension. It was where they had written to the War Department and said, writing back, the name Thomas Urey has not been not on the rolls, not been found on the rolls as filed in this office. Company F, 5th Kentucky Infantry, USA. And no record or capture or parole of a man of this name or organization has been found. Now, right off the bat, I begin to question it. This is a man applying for a Confederate pension. They looked for him in the 5th Kentucky Infantry USA, or CSA. And I begin to wonder, did they look in the right files or wrong? Now, it does say CSA. So, yeah, they were looking for 5th Kentucky. But I begin to think maybe this guy within this pension details that he was a POW, a prisoner of war. And it was still rejected. He was very detailed in the references and location. Notice that he was, even the place of his discharge was Fort Delaware. Okay? That's a POW camp. Okay. So I went looking in the card files, the compiled military service records, and I looked for Thomas C. Urey, Youree. I did find a reference to a cross-reference saying the cards were located in Thomas Younce's application. Notice, Company E, 5th Kentucky Cavalry. Okay? Now, let's just look through these cards for just a second. Oops, I went a little fast. Jumping ahead there. As I looked through the cards, though, I noticed a reference to a POW, and I'll back up and show you those in a second. And I went to look because he was in Alton, Illinois in 1864. The National Archives does have those selected records from the prisoner of war, and I'm familiar with the Alton, Illinois prison, and I've looked at records there before, and so I examined several of those, and a lot of those books are available on Ancestry.com and through Family Search. So there is a Thomas Urey in prison there from the 5th Kentucky. I also noticed in the time period that he was in Oklahoma. He passed away in 1921. Now that was 1915 that he was applying. So he passed away at the age of 85 at the home of his son-in-law, Walter Queen, near Aaron Springs, Oklahoma, on April the 10th. And he had been there and had appeared in his usual health, eating his meals. He came from McMahon a few days previous to attend the funeral of his daughter, Mrs. Queen. So he was there because his daughter had passed away. He had been a resident of Aaron Springs, where they were living, where his daughter and son-in-law were living, for about 13 years. But he went to McMahon about a year ago to live with a son, and I believe he's James E. Urey. His wife is still living, one son and 3 daughters. But the daughter, Mrs. Walter Queen, had passed away just in March previously. Well, I wanted to find more information. I mean, you would too. Look at the persistence, because I did go look because, in fact, he was rejected. But I did find in his compiled military service cards, the spelling of the name is various on all the cards. It's definitely him. He was a prisoner of war, and it's very consistent. I just pulled a few of them out for you to look. But notice that he was in Alton, Illinois, was sent from there to Fort Delaware, but he had come from Alton in 1864 and went to Fort Delaware, and they're consistent. So these are the cards, and you could actually, there are mentions of the references to the registers. This could be confirmed. At the end of the reference, there's an oath of allegiance where he subscribed to at Fort Delaware. That's him. His place of residence was Carroll County, Tennessee. He was from West Tennessee. And his release date. And I know that the family has done a lot of work in where he was in the movement. And I think it's just amazing that there's so much information in regard to this individual. But what's missing in regard to this from that first perspective is the fact that he was rejected, even though he testified faithfully as to his service. He did not obtain a state pension for his service, and you can't fault the folks there at the state because they got the information. It shows you that in spite of people's best efforts, and I believe people were often trying to do the right thing, that because of a spelling of a name, they may not have had that cross-reference at that point. Now, so many of us stop because we don't find the name we're looking for. Good genealogy and good research requires persistence. When you don't see something where you expect it to see the first time, you ask the question, why? Am I looking in the wrong place? Am I looking in the wrong time period? Is the name spelled differently? Is it written so abruptly and up and down you just can't read it? Why? I think for us to do the best job in regard to that, we're going to make the effort to go back and look for the record. We're going to go back and examine the total picture. I think when I went back and looked at the information in regard to him and found his obituary, that I kind of got a little sad in the process of this. And I think because it is a real person. It is somebody who at the point in time in their life was probably looking for a little help. We don't know. And he didn't get it at that point in time. And he went on, by the way. He was persistent. He went on, continued to live after that, probably continued to support his family. Obviously, look, he did. And he lost a daughter. He had other family. I can imagine if this was a descendant of his who had the note and gave me that information, that I've learned something very important about this man. Now, he didn't write continuously when they said they couldn't find him. They had no record of him. He just accepted that fact and went on. He's tough. He's consistent. He's persistent. He was persistent in living his life. As a good researcher, I challenge you that when you run across something that just doesn't sound right or you don't find the answer right away, sometimes it's easy to just stop and move to another area, and it's your choice. But I would encourage you that if you were looking for a gentleman like this, or a lady who did that, or some other family member who did something over here, and you don't see it the first time, what do we do in regard to that? Isn't that why all researchers have this? So we can take a closer look. I encourage you, practice regularly in regard to the reference of what you have. Continue to be persistent. Continue to look for the other pieces of information. And remember, every part of this research builds our knowledge about the records we're looking for and what else might be out there. Good luck, and thanks again for joining me today.